Hey, it's Heidi with Broadmeadow Farm, and today I'd like to talk to you about garlic.
This here is a garlic clove, and when you go to plant your garlic, you'll have to break this up. Here you can see all the little cloves. This is the root end. And each of these little cloves is what you're going to plant in the ground. This here is your root spot, and this is the tip. So you want to make sure that this here goes in the ground and you plant it like this. You want to make sure that the space above the tip is about 1 inch. So you're planting about 2 inches in the ground. So once you have your clove, you're going to want to prep your soil. So here we've got some nicely rototilled soil. Dig a little hole, plant your garlic in, and cover it over just like that.
So one of the biggest misconceptions about garlic is that you need to plant it in the spring. And actually what happens is you don't get a strong garlic plant, and it tends to have much smaller cloves there in the spring. So in my experience, you need to plant your garlic in the fall just like a tulip bulb. I like to wait till we've had a pretty good hard frost, so this year is kind of an odd year for us. We just had Canadian Thanksgiving over the weekend and we planted our garlic on Thanksgiving Monday. Yesterday, we actually just got our first killing frost. We were at about -6 this morning, so that's why we waited this long. So we just had Canadian Thanksgiving here on Monday, and that's when Arlen and I and the kids were able to get all the garlic planted. We've got about 5, maybe 6 varieties that we plant, and we do about 200 cloves each. German Red, Spanish Roja, Persian Star, Music, Russian Red, and Italian Softneck. So I'd hope to be able to show you a little bit more of where we've got the garlic planted, but we got snow this morning when we woke up. This is where we've planted the garlic. It'll come up in the spring, and then throughout the season I'll share with you a little bit how we care for it and then harvest it again in the fall. So when it comes to planting the garlic, we prep the soil with the rototiller so it's nice and light and fluffy. And then what we come in is we use a garlic stamp. If you're only doing 5 or 20 garlic, you can just use your finger and poke a hole. But when you're planting about 1,000 garlic, it gets a bit tedious. So I created a stamp here last year, and then we just use that to stamp in the ground, and it leaves a little divot or a hole that we can drop the cloves in. In between each row, we stomp out a bit of a pathway. That way we can see where everything's going to be in the spring.
So here we have a pathway, there we have a pathway, and then what happens is it tends to mound up this little area here. Each variety has its label at the beginning of each row. So you can see we've got quite a few flags out here marking each of our different varieties.
But enough about the garlic. Let's show you a little bit of what's been happening here on the yard site. Since last week's update, we got our well drilled, and we haven't got a final verdict on how many gallons per minute we get, but at least we have water. We also were able to get the driveway, a big loop put into place, and the clay is all leveled. And today when I showed up here this afternoon, it looks like we've had maybe 1, maybe 2 loads of gravel, which is going to be really nice since we had that snow last night. Otherwise, the driveway gets pretty slippery and slimy with all that clay. So I'm standing here in our future basement, and what you're looking at here are forms for a footing, and that footing will be made of concrete, and once it's cured, then they can start stacking the styrofoam blocks on to make the future basement walls.
This pad here is going to be the future greenhouse. I've got a 20 by 48 greenhouse. I also have some extra upright mid-ribs that in the future, if we need for expansion, that we can go a little bit past this. So this part right here will be the front greenhouse, which is 20 by 48 feet.
So we're praying and crossing our fingers that the snow will stop now and the weather will improve a little bit so that they can finish this basement without having to be slipping and sliming around here. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week.